A very warm welcome to all of you, and many thanks for joining us. Uh, my name's Fletcher Harper. I'm the director of Green Faith, which is an international interfaith climate and environmental justice organization, and am also privileged to serve as the interim director of the Shine campaign. And I'd like to welcome you to this webinar, which is entitled Religions Rising, Faith Communities in Action on Energy Access. We have a wonderful community of speakers today with experience and deep commitment in this area. What I'd like to do before we really turn the microphones over to them is to say that the purpose of this webinar is to work on building a community of practice within religious and spiritual communities on this theme of energy access. I think that it's fair to say that over the last decade, there's been a considerable growth in attention to climate change paid by religious and spiritual communities around the world. But from our perspective at Shine and also Green Faith's perspective, too often that focus has not included an equivalent priority placed on the absolute urgency of making sure that every single person around the planet has access to clean, safe, affordable sources of energy to power their homes, to make productive enterprise more possible, to improve healthcare, and overall to improve the life and well-being of communities globally. And that's what the Shine campaign's role is to try to build communities of practice within religious and also philanthropic communities around that so that we can make sure that resources and attention are paid to this vital issue in the way that they should be. Um, some of you have started doing this already, which is great. I'd love to invite you to uh, share your name, what country you're from, and your organizational affiliation in the chat, just so that we can get a sense of who's here. Um, I'd also like to explain that today our speakers, who I'll introduce momentarily one by one, are each going to share a little bit about their work, and we're then going to go into more of a conversational back and forth kind of mode. And we're going to have time for questions from all of you. So that's the basic format. And without any further delay, I want us to jump right in. And what I'm going to do is introduce one speaker and ask him or her to share an introductory 3 to 4 minutes on their work, then go to the next. So we move through that way, and then we'll go into sort of fireside chat mode, as we call it in the United States. Um, so our first speaker is Mr. L.H. Manjunath, and he is the executive director of the Sri Kasthera Dharmasthala Rural Development Project, which I apologize for mispronouncing. My Christian pronunciation skills are not so good in our Hindu brothers and sisters communities. Um, but the project is a charitable trust that promotes development through a network of 169,000 self-help groups, which now includes about 1.8 million families. And sustainable energy is an important part of the work that the project does. And the project is based at the Hindu Spiritual Center at Dharmasthala in the Indian state of Karnataka. So, Mr. Manjunath, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, and if you would, share a little bit about your work. We'd love to hear about it.
Thanks, Fletcher. It's great to be here this evening with all of you. Well, we work from a place called Dharmasthala, and Dharmasthala is a small village. It's actually a temple village, and we have lots of temples around. This place is actually in coastal Karnataka. Karnataka is one of the southern states of India, and Dharmasthala temple is a 600-year-old Hindu temple, and the deity here is Manjunatha, my own namesake. And it's actually managed by a person who is uh, who is in this position as the hereditary head of the temple, and the current head is Virendra Hegde, and he's a doctorate in the sense he's been awarded doctorates from several universities. Well, in Dharmasthala, it's normally known for charity itself. They are called as four different kinds of charities are done here. The charity of food, so whoever comes to Dharmasthala is fed. Charity of justice, so actually it's called as Abhayadan, helping poor people, helping people to realize, to actually um, get justice or get what they want to. And charity of education, charity of health. The charity of justice is one of the most important activities of the Dharmasthala temple, and as a part of that, the current Hegde has promoted several institutions, one of which is SKDRDP. Let's not go into the detail of SKDRDP. So SKDRDP is the acronym of Shri Kshetra Dharmasthala Rural Development Project, which actually started as a charitable activity of actually trying to help smaller marginal farmers in this area way back in 1982 with temple charity for taking up activities, and which later became a sustainable institution. Currently, we are working in the state of Karnataka, and state of Karnataka has a population of 60 million, of which we are working with 4.5 million people. And like you said, we are working with self-help groups. And currently, we have about 5.5 lakh, almost zero point 0.5 million, 5.55 million self-help groups. And we work on many activities. Actually, community organization, helping them with access to bank finance, access to insurance schemes, actually trying to empower them with training and capacity building, helping them with enterprises and livelihoods, and other activities for their infrastructure like housing, sanitation, energy. We have been working with these groups energy activities for almost 20 years now. That's because my mentor, Dr. Hegde, himself is very much concerned about the environment, and therefore he is more interested in actually pushing the green energy products. And in Dharmasthala itself, as you can, Dharmasthala can house about 25,000 devotees, who comes to Dharmasthala every day, and all these 25,000, the lodges where they are lodged, they have got solar water heaters, and Dharmasthala is lighted by solar home light, solar street lights. And we also have gobar gas plants, a giant gobar gas plant, which actually supplies energy to Dharmasthala kitchen. So from this background, Dr. Hegde wanted to spread this message to the community by asking people to look into the green energy sources. In Karnataka, the grid energy is when, of course, now it's improving, but it's about 50-55% of the population is having access to grid energy, and 24 hours energy supply is also a major issue. So we started working on solar energy since around 1995, and currently we have helped almost 100,000 families in the state of Karnataka to install solar home lighting systems. Each is a typical solar home lighting system having between 2 lightings to 5 lightings, having a couple of fans also to help in summer. These are solar home lighting systems. And we also worked on biogas plants. We have done about almost 70,000 biogas plants. We also work on cook stoves. That's about 400,000 cook stoves have been sold so far. The idea here is actually, we actually help these people by giving them the choice, explaining to them about this equipment, and then help them to source the vendor. And then also we help them to access finance. So it's an end-to-end approach. We first train them about it. We actually sensitize them, bring in the vendor, and then we also bring in the finance. So this way, people are able to use the green energy, the poor people especially. And finally, about helping the poor people to go for livelihood with solar energy. So we have, in the last 5-10 years, we have been pushing in for solar tailoring machines, solar roti makers, the solar bread makers, solar equipment, so that the livelihood also. So far we have done about 25,000, 25 to 30,000 solar livelihood equipment supplied to remote rural areas in the same channel. So of course we have identified vendors who are actually interested in rural solutions like Celco, for instance, Solar Electric Light Company, or for that matter, Greenway Solutions, and of course biogas. Local dealers are there. So we give the choice to the self-help group members to choose whichever product and whichever, and we help them with access to finance. It so far worked very well. And they pay it back over a period of 2 or 3 years in weekly installments. It's worked well.
That's great. Thank you so much, Mr. Majna. You've set the bar very high for all of us. That's really such impressive work. And I'll circle back to you with a question in a moment. Let me now invite, we'll travel from India to Africa, and I'll invite Irene Musameta with Medical Teams International, which is a Christian faith-based health ministry. Irene, could you share with us a little bit about how you've come to this topic of energy access from the perspective of a group that does first-rate work providing medical care to people in need?
Okay, thank you so much, Reverend Fletcher, and everyone here. Great to be here as and part of this discussion. It is a topic that's very dear to us. My name is Irene Musimenta, like Reverend said, and I work as the Senior Manager, Human Resource and Administration. I work for Medical Teams International. It's a faith-based organization that whose calling is actually to dare to love like Jesus, boldly breaking barriers to health and restoring wholeness to a hurting world. Now, that is the core of our work. We provide healthcare to refugees. As most of you, might know, I think Uganda has nearly the biggest number of refugees, and we're blessed to be part of the people that are serving them. We right now serve around 1 million, slightly above 1 million vulnerable people, 70% of those refugees and 30% the locals around those areas. And we do direct health services in terms of running clinics, actual health facilities. So some of these are government, and as you might know, in some of our world, the government facilities are run down, minimal resources, no drugs. And so we go in there, strengthen. So some of the facilities will be co-run with the government and others MTI. We have health facilities that we built, they are made from tarpaulin, and we run a hospital right from tarpaulin. So we do that direct healthcare. Then we do community systems strengthening, where we try to go and empower the communities and teach them and get local leaders there, trying to make it sustainable and help them with a very basic health information to survive. And then we also do health system strengthening. Now this was because, as while we have maybe 40%, 40 to 50% of our facilities with no reliable, some with totally no electricity, others with unreliable, electricity. The challenges, cannot be overemphasized, but right from being able to, we need the proper energy. Why we are part of this discussion is that we need energy to be able to provide better health services, more efficient, run these people. We have cases where we're running, our staff are delivering mothers on phone lights because we do not have any. We're unable to to refrigerate drugs. We're unable to do any kind of data, and everything becomes manual. But for safety, for security, refugee camps are generally in the remotest of areas because they must get prime empty land to be able to put these people there. So these are the remotest areas, and so the safety, the security also without energy is one of those issues for us, for our staff, for our facilities, for the little few equipment that we actually manage to put up. Security will be an issue. So this is, but also just our staff care, employee care, the well-being, power, communication issues for people to be able to communicate to, that we run on the internet, on phones. So for us, this is a topic that's dear to us, and happy to really be here and a part of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Irene. And let's bridge now right away to Andrea Johnson at Green Empowerment, which the Shine campaign has been really, really pleased to work with on developing something called the Power Partnership, because what we have seen is that there are not the equivalent of Mr. Manjunath in different places around the world. And we need to think about how can we create processes and support so that religious communities can take advantage of the very important benefits that clean energy provides. And that's where Green Empowerment has come in. So Andrea, welcome, and thanks so much. I think you may get the prize for waking up earliest. You're on the West Coast of the US. So
it is my pleasure to be here. Thank you. I did mention to Fletcher earlier that I have 2 young children, and so being awake when everybody in the house is sleeping is actually quite a nice, peaceful moment to start this conversation. So like Fletcher mentioned, my name's Andrea Johnson. I'm the Executive Director at Green Empowerment. I'll do a brief introduction on Green Empowerment and dive right into the Power Partnership and our current work with Medical Teams International. So Green Empowerment, we've been around for almost 25 years. We're a small nonprofit, and we work with local partners in their home countries to do renewable energy and clean water access. So we really focus on organizations that are kind of know these communities, understand the cultural context, and are lacking something with technical assistance or administrative support, program management, monitoring, evaluation support, to work with the organizations that are on the front lines, understand the communities to do the work. We focus primarily on community scale water and energy systems. And then we've also had programs supporting energy access for healthcare since about 2006 in both Peru and in Myanmar. Our first programs in Myanmar were working with refugees actually in Thailand from the Karen state. And then we've since stayed working with those different organizations in the Karen Health Department. The acronym is a little bit confusing, but the Health Department of the Karen state in Myanmar to improve energy access for their health clinics with local partners. And so through that work, we had started to actually look at how can we do better data collection to help our partners, health ministries, faith-based organizations, international NGOs, better understand their energy needs first and foremost. And so that actually brought us to the Power Partnership that Fletcher mentioned. And I think, Green Empowerment was invited because we have experience doing this work on the ground. We really believe that there's a lot of local organizations, whether they be social enterprises, installers that understand and know best, but are often left out of these big picture conversations. So we really hope to break silos to match those that need the energy access with those that can develop and deploy it. So that kind of brought us to our work with Medical Teams International. And what the Power Partnership's done to date, using that original app that Green Empowerment created, was their staff, even in the middle of a global pandemic, were able to collect data from 57 of their health clinics using a pretty non-technical app. These are not folks that understand solar. Some of them were health clinicians themselves, and just going around the health facility, collecting pretty basic data about the facility. And that populated a portfolio level database of all their energy needs. So to give you an idea, I think Irene mentioned, of the 57 clinics, 62% had unreliable or no energy access. And of those that did, 50% of those were primarily powered by a diesel generator, or that was their main backup. So depending on where you're coming at this, whether it's from a divesting in fossil fuels perspective or just getting energy access perspective, looking at the Medical Teams International landscape, there was a lot of opportunity for clean energy to power those clinics. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. And our interest with this is helping other entities that might have multiple facilities, like Fletcher mentioned, first just understand their energy needs. And so that's where I think the Shine campaign has been really helpful, as well as making sure that as we think of those, we're focusing on some of the most remote communities and who are the leaders in these communities. And a lot of times those leaders are faith-based groups, whether those are faith-based, health services deliveries like Medical Teams international churches, agricultural leaders. The faith-based communities has so much opportunity, I think, to help deploy energy access. And that's kind of what makes us really excited about this conversation, and how can we find ways to understand that need without us all becoming solar energy experts, which is one of the interests in the kind of data collection app side of it.
Thanks so much, Andrea, and that's great. And I think actually this makes a really good and interesting bridge to Reverend Jenny Phillips with the United Methodist Church, a long time friend of Shine's, and someone who's been committed within the United Methodist Church's considerable global network of trying to find out how to elevate the importance of energy access. And Jenny, I wonder if you could describe your work a little bit. You're based in the US, so you come at this from a different sort of piece of the picture, but share with those on the call here sort of what this means to you and why you're engaging.
Sure, absolutely. So as Fletcher said, I'm Reverend Jenny Phillips. My role is Senior Technical Advisor for Environmental Sustainability at Global Ministries, which is the mission, humanitarian response, and development arm of the United Methodist Church. We are a global denomination with 12 million members in 115 countries. And so we really do wrap our arms around the world. I'm based in Atlanta, but work with colleagues all over the place. I see one of my colleagues here on this webinar, actually, Dr. Marie Claire in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And she's one of our exciting success stories for a pilot project where we put solar at Tunda Hospital, one of the hospitals that she oversees there. And she emails me regularly to say, when can we have more? When can our clinics get solar? Because in her context, and in so many of the contexts we work in, folks just have such need for greater energy access. As Irene talked about, when mothers are giving birth and doctors are using their cell phone for lights, that's not a good situation. It's not a good situation when people are having to breathe kerosene fumes while in surgery, when there aren't basic energy needs to pump water so that people can wash their hands and care for themselves. And so at Global Ministries, we've been working, our Global Ministries has been around for 200 years, and then UMCOR, the United Methodist Committee on Relief, has been working for 80 years to alleviate suffering. And it's become very clear to us that we need to increase energy access for two reasons. One, because it just helps people meet their basic needs in healthcare and economic development, in being able to grow and thrive. And then second, because the use of non-renewable energy sources is contributing to climate change, and the same vulnerable populations with whom we're working are most deeply affected by the impacts of climate change. And so it's really important that we be a leader in renewable energy to address that root cause of climate change.
That's great, Jenny. Thanks so much. As our final speaker to make an introductory presentation, I'd love to welcome Ms. Rosemary Gnocchi, and I apologize again for not pronouncing your name properly, Rosemary, but Rosemary is with the Don Bosco Vocational Training Center, Iringa, in Tanzania, where she is project manager for a remarkable solar technician training program. And she comes to that work with extensive experience working with government and also working with private foundations such as the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation, which has supported the work that the center is doing. So Rosemary, welcome. It's wonderful to see you. And would you share for 3 or 4 minutes about the work you do, about the job training work that you do?
Thank you very much. Currently, we're working in Tanzania. We started our work in renewable energy sector in about 3 years ago. We were quite new in the sector. We were trying to understand why we need to harness this potential or opportunity as a response to climate change. As an organization, we've been working currently in over 146 countries with the solutions of Don Bosco. And our main work is empowering the marginalized young through vocational training and education. Here in Tanzania, I'm the program manager at Don Bosco Networks, the NGO coordinating all its activities in the training institutions. Now, currently, when we started in 2016, we had an objective of getting to be able to train and the students in renewable energy and mainly in photovoltaic. Now, before, this is an industry that has been untapped mainly here in Tanzania. So we had a lot of big renewable energy companies, but we're mainly focusing on energy supply for the affluent. But also we realized as a training institution, we need to review our courses and respond to the needs of the changing dynamic labor market. And in response to this, we were privileged to get the partners from the US, from New Rochelle, our Salesian partners in New York, and Charles Mott Stewart Foundation, who helped us develop a solar training program that is currently running in all our technical institutions here in Tanzania, and yearly producing graduates in solar training, about 540 annually in photovoltaic. Now, in all our TVET centers, we try and get the marginalized young people to come and access quality TVET training in renewable energy, where they get renewable energy plus electronics and electrical, so that they can have a competitive advantage and also help educate their communities about the importance of renewable energy and impact of climate change. Now, with the help of the Charles Mott Stewart Foundation from the US, we've been able to come up with an ecosystem of partners that we work together to ensure that we address the renewable ecosystem, which includes us as a training institution where we provide qualifying technicians to be able to work and do the installation and maintenance of these plants that they set up for homes. While we have other partners in the ecosystem that are handling on the microfinance sector, that when these students graduate, we are able to give them startup capital, and they can be able to start their small like agents or serving their communities and doing installation with small startup tools. While we have another partner called IMED also helping and supporting the students in business incubation. So this company is responsible for training those students after they graduate from our institution to give them the basic hands-on business skills so that they can be able to know in the renewable energy sector, where am I likely to get business? How am I supposed to operate? And how would be the lending and borrowing from the financial institutions identified? On the second element of the renewable energy sector, we are dealing with not only training, but we've been able to set up mini grids, 3 mini grids of over 34 kilowatts in this institution to help us provide productive use of solar. We said we just don't want to teach children and the community about lighting and renewable energy for lighting. We want to show them the creative ways that they can harness from renewable energy and be able to multiply their wealth and also reduce their operational expenses. As a result of these 3 mini grids that have been set up, all our institutions now are able to use renewable energy for productive use. Like we run big schools, technical schools that we have over 1,700 children. So we use renewable energy produced from the mini grids to be able to mill our maize, the corn that the children eat, to do the rice, the paddy that we get. They're able to do the husk with it. They're able to use it in the production units. We do motor vehicle, carpentry and woodwork, tailoring, computer, all that we are using productive use of solar. And this is to encourage the community to know that there is beyond need for renewable energy apart from just lighting, which is commonly based, and people have had bad experience. We're also trying to raise awareness for the communities that renewable energy is key and it can be a sustainable use for them and more effective. Other than that, the students that we train, we are able to support them through job placements. When we train these solar graduates, we are working with over 37 companies here in Tanzania to ensure in renewable energy, to ensure we link them for practical experience. As a training institution, we have these students to a period for those who are doing long course for 6 months, and then they have a period of 2 months to go to the company to get hands-on experience so that they can understand how the sector is working, the different types of systems that exist out there that are probably not in their workshops at school. So with that, we've seen a lot of students also getting employment opportunities and also linkages to be able to know how to set up bigger systems or smaller systems for community, for agriculture, for businesses, as a result of the collaboration that we have with various renewable energy companies. And finally, we are also working to link them with business incubation and innovation. We say they can only be creative and be entrepreneurs if we allow them to explore their creativity. Hence, in all our technical institutions, we set up innovation labs that helps these students to be able to explore, invent new things like inverters, chargers, that they are able to pilot them as prototypes and help them to manufacture, because it is from those things that they do, we are able to fund them and give them seed capitals to start their businesses. Other than telling them go and start a business in renewable energy, we are trying to give them an opportunity to invest in themselves, to be creative and innovative and come up with solutions for their communities. So as a result, we've been able to really influence a lot of young boys and girls. Right now, we are seeing a lot of girls also joining the training. And through the donor has seen the first impact of phase 1. And now we've gotten a renewal of another 2 years to see that we extend our work and really work with remote community, the last mile end communities who are left out with the main grid, that the government is not thinking about them, to give them renewable energy solutions to light their homes, to create, to do business. And this is working in an ecosystem model where we have some partners. I've seen Selco India here are part of the network that we do. We've really drawn a lot of experiences from their work in India. We've drawn from the work that Charles Mott Stewart has been doing with other partners abroad, and also Ethiopia, our other partners. So we've been able to draw lessons from various organizations to see how we improve the quality of programs we are offering for the marginalized young, but also conscientizing the society on the benefits of renewable energy. So with this, we are seeing that every year the intake is increasing, the impact is really doing well, and so far we are succeeding. So that is what we are doing in a nutshell here in Tanzania. And we are a faith-based organization. We are working over in 9 regions here in Tanzania, but mainly in renewable energy and education. And so far, we are happy that we have made partnerships with like-minded organizations. Yes, Father Fletcher, I get back to you.
Wow, Rosemary, that is inspiring. And I don't know if you saw in the chat, but you've already got a request to clone you, to make a copy of you in Kenya. So we know that religious groups have ethical questions about cloning. So we'll have to talk about those before we allow that to happen. But well done. And let's all of our speakers have just been remarkable. Let's give a initial round of online applause to our speakers.
Thanks.
Really,
Thank you.
moving to see this. So let me invite people to begin to share questions. I've seen a couple of questions in the chat box, and what I'll do is I'll start to put those questions out there, and different members of the panel can respond. I'd like to go back initially to Mr. Manjunath and to ask you, sir, in an Indian context, largely, not exclusively, but substantially influenced by Hinduism. Do you find any particular benefits or value that comes from being based within a Hindu Jain initiative, as you described earlier?
Well, Hinduism draws its spiritual energy from the nature itself. So we pray to Lord Sun, we pray to the moon, we pray to the air, we pray to the water. So these are called as Panchabhuta. So that being so, people are actually, Hindus mostly, they use these in their prayers. So it comes naturally to them to look for, green energy, renewable energy. Well, of course, the modern world has taught them to look for other forms of energy. But I think this is a way of going back to nature by looking back to the renewable energy. And that's how Dr. Hegde got interested in
Yep.
solar. And we also have pico hydro plants, hydroelectric power plants also we have been installing, actually homemade pico plants. So I think we are looking at a scenario where um, decentralized energy centers in villages and in households, so that they become sustainable and they become self-sufficient.
That's great. And I wanted to ask that question because we know that the work that all of the speakers do is based in a deeply held set of values and beliefs. And what we've found is that to engage religious communities at a greater scale, it's always helpful to be able to describe those up front, because we need to increase the number of people in religious communities who are doing this, who do this work and who are committed to it. And showing the connection with our deepest beliefs is, I think, a very useful and important part of building that bridge. Um, there was a good question uh, with a lovely, irreverent tone that came from a colleague in Thailand saying, if it's not corrupt, it's not Thai, and asking about the question of dealing with the challenge of dealing with corruption in governments in many different places. And being from the United States, based on our recent experience, I can assure you that that is not unique to Thailand. So at any rate, what I wonder if any of our speakers who have had to navigate these, these complicated networks of relationships with different levels of government, different types of partners, as religiously based groups, what are some of the challenges that you've run into, and what are some of the ways that you've found to work with that? And I wonder, Rosemary or Irene, if either of you would have any insights that you'd like to share on that. Sorry, my internet went slow for just a moment. Um, Irene, would you, or Rosemary, go ahead, and would you like to share a little bit about that?
I think Irene was speaking, and I think she has muted her
Oh, I'm sorry.
microphone.
Your internet indeed went slow, so I missed most of
The question, Irene, was on the on
your
wrestling.
question.
The question was about wrestling with different forms of pressure or even corruption from governmental or other sources in the course of your work, and how as a religiously based enterprise you try to deal with that.
Yeah, of course, the corruption is everywhere, even, and we've seen reports, even, within our big organization, UNHCR, WFP, and it is there in terms of, either wanting to put in their people, to influence, to coerce the movement of resources when we get them, but so the fight and what we struggle for us is that we will we endeavor to stay professional. We endeavor to always look why we are here, and the political climate and insinuations, and almost that you can fail to get work, or to get to be the implementing partner because of that no corruption. But over the last 3 years, I think we have done a great job in emphasizing that we are here for the refugees and emphasizing that we're here to serve. And with time, they get to respect you. It is a constant battle, right from the resources, from employment, and you just have to, and but it's, I think, a cause that, you know,
That's wonderful, Irene. And we lost a little bit of what you said, but I think we got the spirit of it quite clearly about the fact that it's always a challenge. And
a constant job, a constant struggle for us.
right. Oops, sorry to interrupt you. Thank you so much. What about there are some good questions, and I want to try to find a way to engage all of the good questions here. What about the values, the moral, religious, spiritual values that religious communities have about making sure that no one is left behind? I wonder, maybe Rosemary and possibly Jenny, maybe if the two of you could speak a little bit about that and how that affects your perspective on this work. And maybe Jenny, we start with you, and then see if Rosemary would add a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think that ensuring that no one is left behind is central to the core beliefs of the Christian tradition. And so it most definitely informs our work as we're thinking about, when we look at all of our constituents around the world, how there's this tension because we want to ensure no one is left behind, and there is a limit to our resources. And so how do we actually live that value where we want to ensure energy access for the most vulnerable people who are not going to be reached by other types of initiatives that are solely for-profit initiatives, and do it in a way that is fiscally sustainable, because we don't want to be sort of distributing products and not have a plan for how they're going to be maintained over time, and not know where the money is going to come from to maintain them over time. And so we're really in a moment right now. As I shared, we've done some pilot projects and have learned a bit about what it looks like to implement solar projects on the ground. Now we're trying to figure out what is a long-term strategy for financing, for operating, for maintenance, so that we are really building up those last mile communities, not just providing a one-time charity infusion, but helping to lay the foundation for long-term infrastructure that will support those communities. So it's funny because when I'm talking with United Methodists in the pews, in churches, there's kind of a fantasy that we hand out lots of lanterns and solar panels and then everybody will be fine. And then part of the work really is saying, no, this is a long-term initiative and a long-term project of developing long-term infrastructure, both in terms of the physical resources and also the human resources to keep this going so that the community is strengthened and grows.
Thanks.
Fletcher, if you don't mind me just jumping in on that, because that's something that Rosemary mentioned in her introduction that I think is really important, and now Jenny's reflecting on it as well, is if we just give solar panels just for lighting and those aren't sustained over time, there's a little bit of distrust right now, and we're finding this also with Medical Teams International and some of their clinicians in the field about relying on energy for these really critical services. Or relying on solar energy. And so I do think that's such an important point you're bringing up, Jenny. And one of the questions in the chat is also about what's the marriage between financing and energy access and justice and charity. And I think that's part of the benefit potentially of these types of conversations is, if we believe solar and green energy solutions are part of the future, how do we make sure that they're sustained? And part of that is also building long-term maintenance plans and trust. And it sounds like Rosemary's program is addressing that. And I know that's something that we've been talking about quite a bit with medical teams. If you're doing life-saving surgeries, you really have to make sure you have reliable energy. And so how do we incorporate storage, which a lot of solar programs that have been deployed haven't incorporated storage or backup, right? So it is kind of where technology meets financing that meets our values in a way. And I hope that we get to kind of work together to keep solving that.
Yeah, and I want to give a shout out. Sarah Baird has shared a really sort of remarkable question that I want to point to about religious groups, I think, and spiritual groups have a unique capacity both to engage in the development of renewable energy at the local level, and also because of our distributed presence, and also to challenge a global paradigm that is solely driven by profit and by capitalism. And Rosemary, I know that in your work, one of the things that you've done and that the Don Bosco community does globally is to really say to traditional labor markets, you're not getting it right. You are missing out on large segments of the population that need to work and that can do good work because of misperceptions or unwillingness to stretch. I wonder, could you share a little bit whether about that or about Sarah's larger question about how to manage this tension that Andrea also referenced?
Okay, I think very much, Reverend. And in terms of energy that we as Don Bosco Worldwide have put, that our target is a marginalized young, where we don't define them in terms of gender or disability. We allow them to access our training facilities and centers if their condition, especially if they have a disability or medical, that allows them to be in the laboratory or workshops to be able to engage and do. So it's not a risk to their health situation. But for all genders, so programs allow you to come. So the entry criteria programs are very open and transparent. They are shared publicly in the public media, both print and electronic, for them to apply, because this is a project that is funded by a donor that is not choosing and has made these specific references. But to ensure that we support our work and there is continuity, we are insisting that in the work that we are doing, the local community has to be engaged fully, that we want to see also the element of sustainability in the work that we are doing. We just don't want to dish out, as my predecessors have said, panels to them and support that is not going to be an ending. Like in this project that we are currently working on, it is a 5-year phase project, and it has to work up with a larger ecosystem. It has to impact the larger ecosystem unit that we are working here in Tanzania. So it is depending on our impact as a training institution, the business sector that is handling to support the students, as well as the microfinancing and lending. For the communities that we choose to pilot or work with them for productive use of solar, we also have to see that there is local ownership, that they are able to sustain these systems that we are setting up for them, be it the last mile community, be it simple farmers groups that we are working. We are asking them to form groups, and they are able to say, how will they be able to sustain the project after we've left? Because we are not guaranteeing that we will support it entirely or will ensure that everyone participates. But we are telling them they have the capacity to help ensure that the project does not stall, that we are able to multiply and cascade it to other areas. So for example, we started this project with one of our TVET centers in Dar es Salaam, Oyster Bay, but now within a span of 3 years, 4 years, we have it in all our technical schools. That means we are growing. Hadn't the first pilot been sustainable, then we wouldn't even been able to reach out to more communities. So in every, we are trying to plant the seed that they have to invest themselves also in the project, be it in terms of maintenance, regular maintenance of these systems, be it in terms of capacity where they are able to participate in installation or transporting of materials or whatever, so that they can be able to raise. Because if they are using and generating any income, whatever small it is, they have to invest it back in the plant so that the system can continue functioning years after. Because the bad experiences people have had about renewable energy is because they've had bad systems put in place for them because they paid little. And also they did not take care of these systems. So we are saying if we are investing a lot of money in these systems, then we want to ensure, even in our technical schools, how are you saving energy cost? We want you to invest that money in taking care of these systems. So we are trying to ensure that the generation behind will also be able to utilize the services that have already been initiated in these centers. So it's a question of trying to balance between ownership, responsibility, shared responsibility between all stakeholders involved, and inclusion for all that can access what we're providing. I hope I've shed more light on that.
Thank you. Yep, that's wonderful. And as we begin to come towards the end of our time, I wonder if I might turn again to you, Mr. Manjunath, to your approach is very, very deeply embedded, connected, based at the community level, which I think is one of the attributes of really good faith-based work in this area, as many of our speakers have referred to, and which helps build a to use perhaps a Western or United States way of framing things, but it builds a cultural power base in a way, so that the community is deciding and determining its development and its needs, not having those dictated from the outside. I wonder if you could say a little bit about the importance of that from your perspective, that deeply community-based approach.
Well, firstly, even though the organization is run by a spiritual center, the works of the organization is not restricted to a particular community. Where we work in Karnataka, we are open to all religions and all faiths to join us, and that's exactly, that's happening. So we are completely a-religious insofar as implementation of our activities are concerned. Secondly, well, religion and charity. Many people believe that works on charity and religion are correlated. In our case, it is not so. Although we are a charitable institution, we believe that any activity for development has to be sustainable. Sustainable in terms of maintaining the activity, in terms of reaching the facilities, and in terms of actually providing, the developmental source. So therefore, from the beginning, my institution has looked at sustainability in this sense, or the temple has invested money in developing the program, but thereafter, the community itself has funded the whole program. In this sense, the people have used the facilities and have paid for it. For example, we do microfinance, but a microfinance with a difference. Currently, the going rate in India for microfinance institutions is about 24% rate of interest. Well, we acted as an agent of the bank and brought this rate down to, say, 13, 14, which is actually the rate at which the banks lend to a retailer. So, but then banks lend to us at a little lesser rate, and this margin we used as the source of our income. And therefore, by reaching out a large number of the population, irrespective of the religion, we are able to generate resources within the organization to make it sustainable. For example, the solar, the energy initiatives. Well, people pay for their systems, their equipment through their loans. But then the temple also offers a small subsidy as an encouragement, as a blessing of Manjunatha. And then the people, when they install it, they pay for it, the remaining balance, they pay for it. And sometimes we give an interest subvention so that they're able to use this equipment and get interested in the equipment. So it's not about the money, but it's about sustainability. And it's not about just religion. It's religion plus a sustainable, a self-sustaining activity. And I'm very happy to say my institution has been generating surpluses over the last 15 years continuously. And these surpluses are plowed back to the community. This is not a profit-sharing institution. And therefore, everything is plowed back to the community. And therefore, we have no interest in a vendor. When we try to recognize a vendor, we have no interest in him because we're not interested in money. But yet we generate surpluses which go back to the community. So it's a community initiative, all right, but driven from a temple, because many people believe in Manjunatha and believe that this temple can deliver good for them. And therefore, we have used green energy or renewable energy as a very big activity for us. Of course, the total size of our business, like almost 1,25,000 million rupees. It's a very huge business. And compared to that, my energy business is much smaller, but yet we are able to reach out to a lot in the community through individual setups. And therefore, we are able to spread faster. We reach out to the community faster because we are sustainable. And we never looked at charity for running our activities.
Great. Jenny, let me hand the microphone over to you for one final comment, and then we'll wrap things up.
Thanks. Yeah, one other point I wanted to mention is that there's always a tension when we're talking about nonprofit organizations and market-driven organizations and institutions, and I just want to share that there are a lot of companies out there who are driving innovation in really important ways that we need in order to be able to serve our last mile communities. And one of the ways that I think that faith communities can leverage that is to build relationships with those vendors and really tell them what they need. I mean, I really talk with the vendors that we work with and am pushing them toward changing their products so that they're actually meeting the needs of the people on the ground. And so there can be a nice synergy there, even as they are profit driven and we are mission driven. That there is an intersection that I think that we can leverage for good.
Thanks so much, Jenny. And I want again to ask us all to give a virtual round of applause to our speakers who've really done a interesting and thorough job of talking about different ways in which religiously based organizations of different kinds are starting to engage this. The Shine campaign exists to champion the cause of deeper faith-based philanthropic NGO engagement around energy access, to accelerate the flow of resources in a thoughtful and strategic way. And within the faith lane of this work, we're going to be looking to identify ways that we can do exactly that, to accelerate building of awareness and the flow of resources. So I'd like to ask you all, you'll receive a link to a survey evaluating this call and sharing what was helpful, what you'd like to see more of, what you need to know. It would be really, really useful if you could fill that out and share that with us so that we can build the work that the Shine campaign is going to do in this area around what your needs are. And we'll be in touch again soon with next opportunities to come together and to learn from others as well. But I'd like to thank our speakers again, to thank all of you for being here, for your thoughtful and good questions. Lots of good stuff today and lots to build on for next steps forward. So many thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your morning or afternoon or evening. And we look forward to being in touch again soon. And I hope that everyone is blessed for the rest of their time today and tomorrow. Many thanks and take good care. Bye-bye now.